Welcome back to FemBeat's YouTube interview series, where we have lo-fi conversations with inspiring members of our community who are making a difference. Today we're talking with Monica Skinner, a lifelong Austinite, inclusive promoter, and event production enthusiast. She jumped into the music industry at a young age and has been running at full speed ever since, working with fests like the Black and Brown Punk Fest with Chingonas in the Pit, South by Southwest, ACL, and wearing lots of hats in the Austin venue scene, from booking to performing, and more than we can list right now. So here we go! Hey everybody!
Hi!
Hi! We have Monica here with us today. We're going to be talking about the music scene in Austin. A lot of venues have sadly been closing because of COVID. There's also been a lot of call-outs going on. And Monica is very involved in the music scene, so we're excited to talk to her today. Can you just give us a lay of the land, what the landscape has been like in Austin with the music scene right now?
Yeah. So on I think it was March 6th, is when Adler announced that South by Southwest was getting canceled. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of the canary in the coal mine or whatever.
Yeah.
For how things were going to look locally for the next few months after that. Mm-hmm. Because at that point, COVID wasn't really bad here. We didn't have mandated closures of any kind of spaces. But pretty soon after that, large gatherings were banned.
Yeah. And
capacities got cut. And then eventually, where we are right now, bars are totally not able to open unless they have a certain percentage of food sales, which most of the bars and venues you'd think of, they don't have the capacity. They don't have a kitchen. Yeah. So they're just kind of screwed because they can't open, but they're not necessarily getting the funding they need either to stay open. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So a lot of places are just unable to keep making rent. But all the door people, the production people, the audio people, the lighting people, the bar staff, they're all just kind of indefinitely in limbo.
Yeah.
Because if a venue can't make any profit to even pay their rent, how are they going to keep paying all their staff,
Yeah. So I remember seeing on your social, Monica, your commentary about some of these closures in Austin and how some of them feel bittersweet. Can you talk more about the bittersweetness of those closures?
Yeah, I had a lot of mixed feelings when the places that I used to frequent a lot started closing, shutting their doors forever. I was not at all happy to see them go out of business. I have lots of amazing memories. I mean, of course, when a place closes, everyone's going to post all their good memories and post about how it was such a safe space and how it was a home and all of these things that might have been true for some people, but aren't true for everyone.
Yeah.
I started attending shows in those spaces from maybe 13 or 14.
Wow.
But I started working in those spaces maybe 19. I can literally not count the amount of times that something inappropriate happened to me and I didn't feel safe going to staff. There's a lot of people that have been protected in Austin that really shouldn't have, that have done bad things to young girls specifically. I saw it happen to myself and to other girls in the scene where there's dudes that have cool points and they've been in the scene for a long time. Everybody knows who they are. And any new girl in the scene, really, they take advantage of the fact that you don't know their reputation. Mm. And the venues, in a lot of cases, have done very little to make people aware of their reputation as well. Mm. So I guess that's where a lot of the bittersweet feelings come from, because while I love a lot of these spaces that are in jeopardy of closing or have closed, I've also been harmed within them and by staff. And I know so many women and non-binary people who have been harmed and who leave the scene because it's easier to leave than to fight.
And it's hard when you learn about this with your friends or people that you know in the scene and you hear how the venue managers did nothing, because it just sends the message to you, well, if I come forward, they're not going to do anything either.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I try as much as I can to stick around and keep taking up space. And at this point now, I have spoken up to a couple of venues and bookers
Yeah.
about people who I believe are dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And because of how much buzz there is about like victims speaking out right now
Yeah.
and accountability, both of the venues that I approached within this past couple of months about abusers took me pretty seriously, because I think these venues know that if I would have come to them and they would have brushed me off or done nothing, they're like scared of getting canceled. And so I don't know necessarily that if I would have come to them like a year or two ago when these bad things were happening to me, I don't know that they would have done anything.
I know you weren't going directly to like venue managers or staff, but what did support look like back then before the buzz or like them being able to like take you seriously because they were afraid of being canceled?
Other victims,
Yeah.
honestly, because there are a lot of girls like me who have been harmed by like cool dudes
Mm-hmm.
in the music industry, and the solidarity helps a lot, for sure. And then we can kind of advocate for each other as well. Like I've advocated for a lot of my friends that have been harmed and have, with their permission, spoken on their behalf and approached venues
Yeah.
and done that kind of work that it's pretty hard to tell your own story, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like when you can stand up for each other and create this kind of web of solidarity, there's a lot more power in that.
Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Yeah. It's it hits really close to home because that's like kind of how FemBeat started.
Yeah. For sure.
There was an abuser in the film school, and a bunch of victims, survivors found each other and came together, and me and Kayla being two of them.
Yeah.
And we're able to really support each other through that and kind of confront for one of the first times like this wall of silence, this like self-silencing, and then other people kind of staying quiet too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's so much power in solidarity.
And when you don't have the power, it's so easy to just be silenced by people who do have the power.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about call out culture that is so important, is that people are given power who haven't had it and who have suffered from power dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And it's a lot easier to silence one person than a group of people.
Yeah. And we'll say that, like, in my experience with Sam, when we were dealing with that abuser, there were things about the system and the existing channels that were so difficult, even though like they did seem like readily available or open, like it was really difficult, and it was important for us to be able to like have each other through all of that. So yeah.
The system, generally speaking, is not built to uplift survivors in most cases. Like I can't really think of one venue or even one space that I've worked in that has had a clear path to report things, or like you just kind of have to like hope that the person you go to isn't like buddy with the person in question,
And then another thing to add is that like a lot of these spaces aren't informed by like trauma or like support for people who have experienced trauma. So even when you do have like well-meaning people that like want to help out, like they don't really know or like have that support themselves from like the overarching system that they're working in. So
because up until very recently, the business model of an abuser is getting called out that frequents my place, if I just silence the victim, they'll probably just shut up eventually and it's fine. Like that's been like the norm.
Such bullshit.
And even now, like on the other side of it, is like, oh, here's an abuser. If I just throw them away, basically, then the problem's gone. When it's like, no, this is actually like a societal, cultural issue that we need to figure out how to address.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very complicated.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance.
Yeah. I don't know. A lot of people don't know what like accountability looks like growing up, or like on a systemic level, like we think that accountability looks like going to prison or something.
Yeah.
And so it's just like we just disappear problems and we don't really talk about like the circumstances under which like these things happen or why
like,
they happen.
If we do that with abusers, there's always going to be another abuser popping up.
Yeah.
Like we have to hold those people accountable, but we also have to like hold the systemic, the industry accountable.
Mm-hmm.
When we're talking about like you wanting to stay in the scene, these call outs are happening. How do you see things? How would you like things to be rebuilt?
I know that there's already kind of an initiative on this with making safe spaces. Like last year, there was some training to become like a safe space certified venue or something. I don't know who's doing it, but like it felt very like, it didn't feel like super impactful.
Yeah.
And I don't think it should just be a one-time thing, because that's what that was. It was just like a one-time, here's how to have a safe space. But it's so much more complex than that, and I think in a lot of these cases, like I keep referencing it because it's my experience, but like the 2 times that I went forward to venues recently about my abuse, they were kind of like a little dumbfounded when I came to them, like shock. Like they were like, oh, I can't believe that kind of. And I think that there should be like not a scripted response, but like you should be prepared for these kinds of things to happen. It should not be a shock to you.
Yeah.
It's rampant in the music scene. For them to act like it's a shock, it's like such a privilege to not ever have to deal with that.
Yeah.
It also just feels like lies, but
there just needs to be protocol.
Yeah.
There has to be, which has to be like in the training and discussed. It's like you shouldn't just scramble to figure out what to do once something's happened, when it's too late. Like you should be like, okay, if X happens, here's what we do, and have that outlined and ideally public for all of the employees to see, because anybody could be approached about a situation of abuse, if there's not already a clear channel made. Seeing like sort of the wave of accountability and these conversations pop up and talking to others and acknowledging that like a lot of my early adult life has been formed like downtown and in clubs and in venues and in spaces where like I've had a lot of great memories too, and I've met a lot of people that are really important to me still. It's not like it's all bad. Like I would really like to be able to stick around to like make it so that the future waves of young girls don't have to go through that, Like I've been trying to not put too much weight on myself of like single-handedly like fixing it all. Like I'm trying to start small and think of the work that I can do. And I think I volunteered for Girls Rock Camp for the first time this past year, which was really, really cool. It was virtual, but it was awesome, and I got to connect with a lot of young girls that are so stoked to be in the music industry, don't have one drop of jadedness in them yet.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I really appreciate you talking to us about all of this, and it's not easy stuff to talk about, but I also appreciate your hope for the future of the scene, and I'm really glad that you're a part of it.
As a layperson, like outside, or who's not as involved with like music scene here in Austin, I appreciate you making it visible and talking about it and basically informing me and giving me that entry point to look into it more. I think that's really important that you've been talking about it so vocally. So thank you.
If you don't talk about it, it's isolated, and people don't know that it's rampant, and people don't know that the things happening to them are happening to other people. Yeah. And so it gives more of that courage to speak up and that solidarity that is really healing.
Can you tell us how people can find you and see what you're up to now?
Yeah. So my Instagram is where I'm most active. It's Miso Texas, just all one word, Miso Texas. And I'm making masks.
Yeah.
I'm raising funds to donate to different mutual aid groups. And I've also been working a lot with Chingonas in the Pit in the past 2 years. I think it's a San Antonio decolonial feminist collective where a lot of my activism has been channeled through that as well.
Badass.
So yeah, Miso Texas and Chingonas in the Pit with an X.
Yay.
Yay! And not to get into it too much, but with your mask making, how can people get your masks?
Yeah, well, I donate like a portion of every single batch, or so every single mask. Some of it goes to a different rotating organization, but it's all right now just on my Instagram. Like I post a batch about every 2 weeks on my stories, and then they sell out, and then they're gone. But I might be making a website soon. But
Yes.
if I do, it would definitely be linked on my Instagram, Miso Texas. And it would probably be branded under the same name too, because that's sort of my identity now. So, Miso Texas.
Miso Texas. Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Monica.
Thank you.